Story 1. The Tenant in 3B. I never believed in ghost stories or haunted apartments. I've always been the type to roll my eyes when people talk about hearing voices or feeling a presence. But then I moved into a quiet, older building in Portland, and something about apartment 3B didn't sit right. The strange part? I never saw anyone go in or out. I never heard a door open. But I started hearing whispers through the wall, and they weren't just talking. They weren't angry, and they were getting louder. I moved into my first solo apartment in early fall of last year. Nothing special, just a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a quiet older building in Beaverton, Oregon. Rent was cheap because the place was a little outdated. Creaky floors, yellowed walls, and those clunky radiators that hiss in the morning. But I liked it. It was quiet, peaceful. Most of the tenants were older, retired types. The woman across from me always had crossword puzzles tucked under her arm. The man down the hall left his door open when football was on. Nobody bothered anyone, and I liked that. My place was apartment 3A. Next door was 3B, though I never saw anyone coming in or out. The door stayed locked, the blinds always down. I assumed whoever lived there kept to themselves, which was fine. 2 weeks after I moved in, I started noticing something odd. Every time I got home from work, I do evening shifts at a local clinic. There'd be this faint noise coming from 3B. It wasn't music or TV. It sounded more like murmuring, like someone talking low, too low to understand. Not angry, not distressed, just constant. I try not to think much of it. Some people talk to themselves. But the weird part was, it always stopped the second I opened my door. Like a switch. I put my key in and nothing. Just silence. At first, I figured it was a coincidence. But then I started hearing it from my bedroom, too. Our units share a wall, and some nights, around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd wake up and hear that same low murmuring. No rhythm to it, no breaks. Just a stream of barely audible sound, like a voice on the other side of the wall, right by the head of my bed. Again, the second I shifted or sat up, it would stop. One weekend, I had my friend Caddy stay over. She's a nurse, used to working odd hours like me, and I hadn't told her anything about the noise. We were watching a movie late, maybe close to midnight, when she muted the TV and asked, "Do you hear that?" I nodded. It's the neighbor. They talk to themselves sometimes. She frowned and said, "That doesn't sound like talking. It sounds like pacing." And that's when I realized it had changed. The sound had become footsteps. Slow, heavy ones walking back and forth right along our shared wall. Over and over. For hours. I asked the landlord about it the next morning. He hesitated, then said, "Far as I know, no one lives in 3B. When I pushed him on it, he got defensive. He said the last tenant had left quietly a few months ago, and they hadn't re-rented it yet. I asked if maybe someone was squatting. He said the locks were intact, and maintenance hadn't reported anything unusual. But something in his tone told me he knew more than he was letting on. A few days later, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. Just unlocked. I chalked it up to my own mistake. Maybe I'd been rushing out that morning. But that night, I found something that made my stomach turn. Inside my kitchen cabinet, the one I use for dry food, tucked behind a box of cereal, was a key. Not one of mine. Old brass, with a tarnished label scratched faintly with 3B. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept it in a drawer and try not to think about it. But curiosity got the better of me. The next night, around 1 a.m., when I'm sure everyone should be asleep, I stepped into the hallway and tried the key on the door to 3B. It worked. The apartment was dark, stale with dust. No furniture, just a lingering smell like wet paper and wood rot. I didn't go in. I just opened the door, peeked in with my phone flashlight, and stood there. And in the silence, I heard my name, whispered, soft, from inside the unit. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and threw the key down the trash chute. I moved out within a week. I waited that long to move because I didn't have enough funds, and I needed a little time to make up cash from friends and family. Told the landlord I had to relocate for work. Didn't mention what happened. Didn't ask any more questions. But sometimes I still think about that voice. The way it sounded like someone just on the other side of the drywall, like they'd been listening to me the whole time. And the worst part is, ever since I left, I've had this recurring dream. Always the same. I'm unlocking a door that isn't mine. and someone is already waiting on the other side.
Story 2. The Girl by the Exit. When I worked the night shift at a dead-end movie theater outside Columbus, I never expected much more than mopping floors and refilling popcorn machines. But there was one hallway, one exit door where things never felt right. It started with a girl who wouldn't speak, and ended with me walking away and never looking back. I wasn't the first person to see her, but I sure as hell hope I'm the last. This happened about 3 years ago, back when I was in college. I was working part-time at a movie theater in a small town just outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a glamorous job, sticky floors, stale popcorn, the usual, but the late-night shifts were quiet, and I used them to catch up on homework between screenings. I usually close on Thursdays and Fridays. Most nights were uneventful. We had one security guard, but honestly the place was so dead after 11 p.m. that he usually just did a walkthrough and sat in his car. My basic job was cleaning the theaters after each show, taking out trash, and shutting everything down before locking up around 1 a.m. There was something oddly peaceful about it. The whole place empty, the projector rooms humming, exit signs glowing red. It was just me and the silence. One night in late October, I was cleaning one of the smaller screens, Theater 5, precisely after a horror double feature. The whole building was empty except for one coworker in the office. As I moved down the rows picking up soda cups, I noticed something weird. A girl was sitting in the very back row, just sitting there completely still. I froze, thinking maybe I missed her during the sweep. I apologized and said something like, "Hey, sorry, we're closed. Need to head out now." She didn't say anything, just sat there staring straight ahead, not at me, not at the screen, just forward. She looked about 15 or 16. She had long red hair, an oversized hoodie, and ashen-colored skin. I figured maybe she'd snuck in or was waiting for someone. I didn't want to make a big deal, so I told her again, a little firmer, that we were closing. Still nothing. When I got closer, I realized her eyes were unfocused, like she wasn't looking at anything. She wasn't blinking much either. It gave me this tight feeling in my chest. I backed off and went to get the manager. By the time we came back, the theater was empty. We checked every exit, the bathrooms, the halls, still nothing. No sign of her. I started wondering if I'd imagined her or maybe just saw a shadow, and my brain filled in the rest. But I knew what I saw. A few nights later, I was finishing up again. It was around 12:45 a.m. I was shutting off the lights when I saw her. Same girl, standing near the emergency exit at the end of the hallway between theaters 3 and 5. She wasn't moving, just standing about 10 feet from the door, staring directly at me. This time it felt heavier. She didn't seem real. Not like a ghost or anything, more like she shouldn't be there. Something about her just didn't line up. No phone, no bag, no movement. Just this blank, eerie stillness. When I turned to call for help, she was gone. Not down the hall, not through the exit. Just gone. I checked the security footage the next day with the shift lead. It showed me walking down the hall. And nothing else. No one was there. But I swear she was. That's when things started to shift. Some nights, I'd find one of the theater doors slightly ajar. Lights still on, popcorn spilled over the seat, like someone had just left. I'd hear faint footsteps in the hallway when I was locking up, or the sound of a seat creaking behind me when I was cleaning. Once, I even heard breathing. Not mine. It was coming from inside the projection room while I was resetting one of the reels. The last time I saw her was the night I quit. I was alone vacuuming the lobby. It was just before 1 a.m. I glanced up toward the front glass doors, and she was standing outside. Not moving, not knocking, just watching, the usual. I stared back for what felt like forever. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear the vacuum. I walked slowly toward the door, and right as I got close, she tilted her head. It wasn't a curious tilt. It was slow, mechanical. That's when I noticed something I still don't understand. Her reflection wasn't right. Her body was facing me, but in the glass, her head was still looking forward. I turned and ran. I didn't lock up. I didn't even clock out. I just left. Sat in my car with the engine running until sunrise. When I told my manager the next day, he didn't laugh or shrug it off. He just nodded and said, "You've seen her too, huh?" I never went back. I heard later that a girl around that age went missing a few years before I started working there. The story was vague. She ran away from home, maybe, or disappeared after a movie. They never found her. Someone said she was last seen near that theater. I don't know what I saw. I still don't. But sometimes late at night when I'm walking past a storefront or a bus stop, I catch a glimpse of someone standing too still. And I always look away before I see their face. Before we dive into the next story, if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe to our channel and tap the bell icon so you never miss a chilling tale. We rely on your support to keep bringing you true, terrifying stories. So please share these videos with your friends and family. Thanks for being here. Now let's continue.
Story 3. The Unit at the End of the Hall. This next story is narrated from the perspective of a police officer. It is based on an unofficial incident summary. My name is Officer R. Maddox, and I'm not one for telling stories, but some cases don't leave you. I've been a patrol officer for about 14 years in the western part of the city, mostly residential calls. You learn to recognize patterns pretty fast. Family arguments, noise complaints, overdoses. Same blocks, same faces. But this one's different, and I still don't really know what to make of it. It started with a missing person report filed on April 3rd, a tenant named Elena Bishop. Lived alone in apartment 107 at the Silver Pines complex. Quiet woman, mid-30s, worked remotely for a publishing firm. Her supervisor had tried to reach her for 2 days with no response, so she called it in. I was the responding officer. When I got there, the property manager met me out front. He seemed jittery. Not anxious like most people get when something bad happens, more like someone trying not to say too much. Said she always paid rent on time, no complaints from neighbors, no issues on record. But he added something strange. He said, she wasn't the first one to go quiet in that unit. That stuck with me. I knocked. No answer. We had maintenance unlock the door. The place was spotless. No sign of forced entry, nothing disturbed. Her phone was charging in the kitchen, computer still open on the dining table, half a glass of orange juice on the counter like she just stepped out. But she hadn't taken her keys. Her wallet was still there. Everything was still. We did a walkthrough. Closets, windows, and under the bed. Nothing. But there was one thing that made my stomach turn. Every mirror in the apartment had been turned around. Even the little ones, makeup compacts, and mirrored cabinets. All were flipped to face the wall or closed tightly. There were no signs of struggle. No blood. No noise complaints. But something about that felt wrong. Like it wasn't panic, it was intentional. Deliberate. I filed it officially as a disappearance. But I came back on my own time a few days later. I talked to the neighbor across the hall, an older guy named Mr. Hanover. Lived there for a decade. He said Elena had started acting strangely about 2 weeks before she vanished. Said she'd stopped saying hello, started avoiding eye contact, and wouldn't answer the door at all in the last few days. But the oddest thing? He claimed he saw her standing in the hallway at 2 a.m. one night. Just standing there, completely still, looking at her own front door. For almost 10 minutes. When he asked if she was okay, she didn't answer. Didn't even flinch. Then, without turning her head, she walked back into her unit and closed the door behind her. I checked building records. The property manager wasn't lying. There were 3 other disappearances tied to that unit in the last 12 years. All single tenants. All under 40. All with no criminal history, no known mental illness. In each case, the missing person's belongings were left behind, and no foul play was ever proven. All of them just vanished. Now here's where it gets hard to talk about. About 3 weeks after Elena went missing, I got a call from a rookie officer I'd worked with before. He picked up a strange report while canvassing the neighborhood, a complaint from a woman in the next building over, who said she'd seen someone standing outside apartment 107. The problem? The unit was sealed. Officially unoccupied since the investigation. I responded personally. We checked the exterior cameras. One caught a brief figure standing by the unit's front door. The footage is low resolution, but it's clear enough to make out the outline of a woman barefoot, wearing what looked like a long t-shirt. She never knocked, just stood facing the door. Then the feed glitches, and when it comes back on, the figure's gone. It lasts maybe 10 seconds. But I'll never forget what I noticed next. Her reflection in the window next to the door. It didn't match her posture. She was standing still. but the reflection had turned slightly as if looking at us. That footage never made it to the report. I pulled it unofficially. Kept it. Maybe I shouldn't have. The case is still open. The department doesn't like talking about it, too thin to call a pattern, too weird to explain publicly. But I go by there sometimes late at night. That hallway always feels colder than the rest of the building. Like it holds a draft, but only in that one spot by 107. Last time I was there, I swear I saw something move behind the peephole. But no one's lived there since Elena. And no one should be inside. I've had nightmares about that hallway. Not dramatic ones. Just standing there watching that door. Waiting for something I can't describe. The kind of fear that doesn't shout. Just watches you. Quiet. Patient. And sometimes I wonder if that's how it starts, not with violence but with silence. Because if you listen too long, you might start hearing it. Listen back. Story 4. The Silent Floor. This is one of those stories I never planned on sharing. Not because I'm afraid of being believed or ridiculed, but because saying it out loud makes it feel real again. It happened 7 months ago when I took a short-term IT contract in northern Michigan. The job was fine. It was the apartment they put me in. That place had something wrong with it. I still don't know what I experienced there. But I know I wasn't alone. Back in 2021, I took a 6-month contract in Traverse City, Michigan. The company handled everything: travel, accommodation, and even a car. They put me up in a small corporate housing complex on the edge of town, kind of like extended stay units for business folks. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a 5-story building. Simple layout, a bedroom, a kitchen, a little living space. Carpeted floors, big windows, and super quiet. That was the first thing I noticed. It was silent. Like the whole building was padded. I thought that was a good thing at the time. Most of the units seemed empty, especially on my floor. I only ever saw one other person, a woman on the 2nd floor, who nodded politely in the elevator and always looked kind of tired. No late night parties, no loud neighbors, no weird smells. Just sterile, hotel-like quiet. About 1 month in, the silence started to feel wrong. At night, when I'd lie down, it didn't feel quiet. It felt like something was listening. I know how that sounds. But I'd lie in bed, and it was like the silence had weight to it. I kept my TV on low just to fill the space. One night around 4 a.m., I got up to grab water and noticed something strange. The hallway outside my apartment was lit, but there was a faint shadow under my door. Like someone was standing out there. Not moving. Just there. I waited for a knock. Nothing. I walked to the peephole. Nobody. But when I opened the door, I heard footsteps echoing far down the hallway. No doors opened or closed. No elevators dinged. Just those fading steps. Things got weirder. I started waking up at exactly 4:17 a.m. every night. No alarm. No outside sounds. I'd just snap awake, heart racing. Each time I'd sit up, completely alert, like someone had called my name. On the 4th night, I checked the hallway again. This time, the overhead light was flickering, and one of the exit signs was hanging crooked. But when I went downstairs later that morning, it was fixed. I even asked the maintenance guy, and he looked confused, said nothing had been reported broken. Then I started getting calls on the apartment's landline. I'd never given out that number. Didn't even know it worked. The first few times it rang once, then stopped. No voicemail. Then one night I picked it up. All I heard was breathing. Not heavy, just constant. Like someone was standing there with the phone to their mouth. After maybe 10 seconds I said, "Hello?" and the line clicked dead. The final straw came about 3 months in. I came home late from a server migration and went straight to bed, exhausted. I woke up like always at 4:17. But this time I wasn't alone. Someone was sitting at the foot of my bed. I didn't see them, I felt them. The mattress dipped. My feet were freezing. I couldn't move. Not sleep paralysis, I'd had that before. This was something else. My body wouldn't move, like I was being held down. The breathing started again. Same as the phone, slow, measured. Except now it was right next to my ear. I swear to God, I didn't imagine this. Then came a whisper, "You hear it too." The next thing I remember is sitting up in bed, light pouring in from the blinds. It was 9 a.m. My mattress still had an indent, like someone had been sitting there. I left that day. Packed a bag and checked into a hotel. Didn't even call work until the next morning. 2 days later, I returned with a colleague to get my things. The apartment was freezing, even though the heat was cranked up. We grabbed my stuff quickly and I handed in the keys. Didn't explain a thing. Later I looked up the building online. Nothing creepy in the headlines. No deaths or ghost stories. But I did find something strange. Several reviews from past tenants talking about strange late-night sounds, people standing outside their doors, and one even said, "You'll never sleep past 4 a.m. I wish I'd read them before I moved in. Even now, I sleep with background noise. Podcasts, TV, anything. Because sometimes when it's completely silent, I still hear that breathing. And once, just once, I thought I heard it whisper again. You hear it too."
Story 5, The Girl Who Sees Them. Some stories don't come from haunted houses or abandoned roads. Sometimes the haunting follows the person, not the place. This one was shared with me by someone I met a while ago when studying abroad. My roommate, a quiet girl from Nigeria who always avoided crowded rooms and never slept with the lights off. When she told me why, I didn't believe her. But the truth is, I think about what she said almost every night. After some persuasion, she decided to share her story. My name doesn't matter. If you can hear this, just understand I've never wanted attention for this. If anything, I wish I were normal. I'm 27 now, living currently in Abuja, Nigeria. But for as long as I can remember, I've seen things other people don't. Not demons or Hollywood-style ghosts. Just people. Dead people. Quiet, still, and always watching. I first saw one when I was 5. My grandmother had just passed. The night after the funeral, I woke up and saw her sitting by the wardrobe in my room, gently humming a hymn she always sang. She looked calm, not scary, but she wasn't really there. Her lips weren't moving. The humming was just inside my head somehow. When I told my mom, she assumed I was dreaming. But I wasn't. Over the years it got worse. It's not every day, not even every week. But when I do see them, it's always the same pattern. They don't speak, they don't blink. They just watch. Once, in secondary school, I was in the science lab alone during break. I was tidying up beakers when I saw a boy standing in the far corner, wearing our old school uniform, the version we'd phased out before I joined. He didn't move. Didn't react when I said, "Hello." But when I turned to leave, I heard someone whisper, "You saw me." Nobody else heard it. I didn't go back to that lab for weeks. By the time I got to university in Ibadan, I'd learned how to hide it. I avoided dark reflections. They're the worst. Ghosts don't always appear in mirrors, but when they do, they're never where they should be. One time I was brushing my teeth in my hostel, and in the mirror behind me was a woman just standing in the hallway. Hair covering her face like the wind was blowing through her, even though everything else was still. When I turned around, no one was there. But the mirror still showed her walking past the open door. It still followed me even when I traveled abroad to do my master's at Columbia University. The worst experience I've had was just last year, on my way home from a friend's wedding in Lagos. It was late, and I called a Bolt to get back to my aunt's house in Surulere. The driver was quiet. He didn't play music, didn't say much. Just nodded when I said my destination and started driving. But about 10 minutes in, I saw a man sitting in the passenger seat. He wasn't there when I got in. His head was slumped forward like he was sleeping, and I could feel the temperature in the car drop. It was subtle at first and I just got goosebumps. Then the man turned his head. His face looked bruised, like he'd been in an accident. One of his eyes was completely black, and his mouth hung slightly open. I didn't scream, I just stared. He looked right at me, then slowly turned back toward the road. That's when the driver spoke. He said, "Do you see him too?" My blood went cold. I asked him what he meant. He just shook his head and muttered, "He follows me sometimes, says nothing, but he shows up when I drive this route." I got out of that car before we reached the house. Walked the rest of the way. Didn't sleep that night. I still wonder what would have happened if I had stayed in that car longer. People assume I'm shy. I don't like crowds. But it's because sometimes I can't tell who's alive and who's not. If someone doesn't blink, doesn't speak, or stands too still, I avoid them. That's how I cope. I've tried church. I've tried prayers, fasting, even traditional consultations once, though I won't go into detail. Nothing takes it away. The best I can do is live around it. Keep my lights on. Avoid staying alone too long. A few months ago, I moved into a new apartment in Gorimpa. Quiet area. Clean, no history. But on my second night, I woke up to the sound of someone knocking inside my wardrobe. When I opened it, nothing was there. But I knew what it meant. Some people get haunted by a place. I've realized mine just comes with me. We've come to the end of the series today. And if you made it this far, you're braver than most. These were just a few of the true experiences people have chosen to share. But we know there are more out there. Maybe even yours. If you've lived through something strange, something you can't explain, share it in the comments or just send me a direct email. We might feature your story next. And if you want more real, spine-chilling encounters just like these, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who thinks they don't believe in ghosts. We post new terrifying true stories every week. Sleep light tonight.